All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Raymond Ford versus O'Shaquie Foster, a very, very tight affair, but O'Shaquie Foster doing just enough to gain a majority decision victory and hold on to his WBC super featherweight world title. Like I said, razor close. Coming into this fight, I said it was a 50-50 fight, and that was the perfect 50-50 fight. There's a lot of fights that we watch and say, all right, it's a 50-50 fight on paper, but then you go and watch them and they're a blowout, like Shakur Stevenson versus Teofimo Lopez, Mario Barrios versus Ryan Garcia, Daniel Dubois versus Fabio Wardley, which ended up just being a Daniel Dubois demolition job. Lots of these 50-50 fights on paper look good, but very rarely do we see them actually be so closely contested each and every round and come to a close decision. And we'll get into the scorecards because it is an interesting thing. For me personally, I scored at 115 to 113. It'll be up on your screen how I scored each and every round. The official scorecards were 114, 114 a draw, 118 to 110 Foster, and 116 to 112. I think that's a little bit generous to Foster. 118 to 110, 116 to 112, I have no problems with. A draw, you could argue. But for me personally, I don't think Raymond Ford did enough in that fight to get anything from it. A draw or a win. For me, it was O'Shaquie Foster that won it. Very, very narrowly, don't get me wrong, but you couldn't have given Raymond Ford a win. If they came to a draw, I'd say, yeah, fair enough. I think that fight was close enough for you to garner a draw, but no more than that for Raymond Ford. I was more than happy to see O'Shaquie Foster win that fight. Like I said, I scored at 115 to 113. Few rounds in there, I'm sure you could switch back and forth. The ninth round, I saw plenty of people give it to O'Shaquie Foster. The very first round, that one's a contentious one as well. You know, I would argue that it should be a 10-10 round. Nothing happened in the round apart from O'Shaquie Foster throwing Raymond Ford out of the ring, which in my opinion, we should start on that. In my opinion, I think that should have been a point deduction. I don't know why O'Shaquie Foster got away with it. I know Ray Ford made the most of it. Like, he probably could have held himself up a little bit better. He could have probably stopped himself from going out of the ring. So he made the most of that opportunity. But I think O'Shaquie Foster clearly did like a hip thrust onto him, throwing him out of the ring. I think the referee should have said, all right, that is a point. You can't do that. All right. Whether Raymond Ford made the most of it or not, I think it was a point deduction. And that was pretty much the cutting point of how I gave that first round. I says, O'Shaquie Foster, you're very lucky to not get deducted a point. Not a lot happened in there, but you probably made a little bit too much carnage and you did foul the guy. So mentally just sort of, all right, I'll sway it to Raymond Ford. But you could have given it either way. You could have given it 10-10 as far as I care. Not that they ever give 10-10s. Other than that, I was pretty happy with my scorecard. I think that was the fairest way to do it. 116 to 112, I don't have any qualms with either. 118 to 110, I think it's too generous to Foster. I don't think that depicts the fight. That gives 2 rounds to Raymond Ford. I believe he won more than 2 rounds. What was the difference maker in this fight? Look, Raymond Ford, I thought fought very, very well. As you saw from my scorecard, I gave Ford most of the early rounds, and the second half of the rounds I gave to Foster. And for Ray Ford, I thought he did well early. He was able to counter punch very, very well. It was the quickness and the precision in his counter punch and catch and counter. Every time he sent out that jab, he was able to counter it. And it was the speed. I don't think O'Shaquie Foster was expecting how quick Raymond Ford was going to be able to jump onto those counters. And he was able to do that for the opening few rounds. There was a few rounds as well where he was the aggressive one. He was on the front foot. He was pushing O'Shaquie Foster back, landing a few clean punches, a 1-2. There wasn't a lot there. He wasn't really throwing many combinations. There was an odd rip to the body. There was the odd power punch, but most of it was just precise, making sure the punches land. He landed 1 or 2 good uppercuts within the first 5 rounds. But then we see the second half of the fight. The second half of the fight, it looked as though Raymond Ford, about 6, 7, 8 rounds in, was starting to gas out. He was starting to tire. O'Shaquie Foster gained the ring generalship. He was in the middle of the ring. He was pushing Raymond Ford back for the majority of the last few rounds, and that was the difference maker in this fight. O'Shaquie Foster didn't do anything spectacular in the second half of that fight in terms of piecing him up, landing big shots. It was just constant combinations, 1-2, push him back, throw that jab. Don't let Raymond Ford land the counter. There wasn't many counters in the second half of that fight that Raymond Ford actually landed, and he reduced the amount he threw massively. In the 11th round, there was a clinical punch by Foster. He actually hurts Raymond Ford with a right hand up against the ropes, busts his nose a little bit, and that was really, you could see the difference in the two fighters. You saw O'Shaquie Foster full of energy, landing these big punches, and Raymond Ford starting to shell up, go into a bit of a hole, and not really having anything left. And O'Shaquie Foster, he didn't do anything exceptional, like I said, in the second half of that fight. but he was on the front foot. He was being aggressive. He was controlling the distance. He was landing good 1-2s, and he wasn't allowing Raymond Ford to have any success in counters or what Raymond Ford actually resorted to, because by about 8 or 9 rounds, the counter had gone, and it was just, all right, let me throw massive big punches and hope to God one of them lands. My left hand, my right hand, one of them hopefully will land. There was a few rips to the body if he could close the distance, but what worked so well for him in the first half of the fight of catching and countering, being quick on the counter, just went out of there. That's a combination of O'Shaquie Foster growing into the fight, being more active, being more aggressive, controlling that distance better, and Raymond Ford actually gassing out. I can't believe that Raymond Ford, this is his 4th fight in the division. And, you'd think O'Shaquie Foster, he's been in the division for quite a while. If there's either one's going to gas out, it would be the guy that's sort of veteran in this division rather than the guy stepping up. But Raymond Ford's conditioning, I don't know whether he's just still too big for this division, has to go up one more. But I thought it was poor. I was like, why is he so gassed out so early? I know he missed a lot of big shots. That takes it out of you. He was chasing O'Shaquie Foster for a reasonable amount of that fight. But round 6, round 7, round 8, there's no excuses for gassing out, in my opinion, in a fight like that. Because it wasn't a high-octane fight. It wasn't a high-volume throwing punches. You're eating a lot of punches to the body. You're eating a lot of punches to the head. Your output is high. It wasn't that type of fight. It was a very quiet, subdued fight. Everything was precise. Nobody was sort of overreaching what they were doing. Everything was sort of composed. So the fact that he gassed out so early, that was a big problem. But a great performance from O'Shaquie Foster. Like I said, I don't think you could give it any other way. I have it O'Shaquie Foster winning that fight. He showed his experience. He showed his conditioning. He showed his skill set. I think he might have underestimated Raymond Ford a little bit too much in the earlier rounds of the fight. Grew into the contest, controlled that distance, went back to what he did really, really well against Stephen Fulton. And surprisingly, we saw a whole fight where he fought orthodox instead of switch stancing. So that worked as well, because I fully expected him to start switching stances. And I wonder whether Raymond Ford prepared for that as well. And then all of a sudden, the middle rounds, he wasn't a southpaw. And all of that training that you have to fight a southpaw because you know he's going to switch stances went out of the window. What is next for O'Shaquie Foster? We saw a very, very heated face-off after that fight between O'Shaquie Foster and Shakur Stevenson. These two guys have been at odds for quite some time, especially in the build-up to this fight. O'Shaquie Foster fighting Ray Ford, a good friend of Shakur Stevenson. There was always emotion in this fight between O'Shaquie and Ray, and there was always emotion between Shakur and O'Shaquie Foster. Love to see that fight. No doubt about it. I think that'd be a great fight. I think it'd be a high-level fight as well. Maybe not the most appealing to the eyes, but I think it'll be a very high-level skilled fight. Obviously, I'd back Shakur Stevenson. The problem I have with that fight being made is, where does it get made? What division? I don't see Shakur Stevenson dropping to 135. It'd have to be at 140, whether Shakur Stevenson actually wants to drop back down there or not. I'd love to see the fight regardless. Look, if they can make that fight happen, 100%. The one that I'm looking at more, though, is actually Emmanuel Navarrete. I think that's actually the better fight. I think it's easier to be made, and I think it'll appeal to more people than Shakur Stevenson trying to drop down and take on O'Shaquie Foster. I think Shakur Stevenson has moved on from those divisions, and it's sort of, all right, what are you doing at super lightweight? What are you doing at welterweight? Let's see you with these other big names. No offense to O'Shaquie Foster, but I just think Shakur Stevenson is in a different sort of sector now. Look, if he wants to take this fight just out of pure pride and out of, avenging his mate, fair enough. I'm more than happy to watch it, but I think I want to see O'Shaquie Foster versus Emmanuel Navarrete, or even O'Shaquie Foster versus Anto Kakache. Either one of those, I'm more than happy, but it'll be a question of whether they can reach an agreement between O'Shaquie Foster and Shakur Stevenson. All right, guys, let me know what you think of that fight. There was a lot of fights over the weekend. We saw the Misfits card yesterday. Charlie Edwards being upset. Dimitri Bivol fought this morning. Adam Azim fought this morning. We had the MVP women's card that was stacked as well. A heap of boxing. I haven't been able to watch it all. I was up all night, 2 a.m. to like 5:30 a.m., watching Arsenal play PSG. Absolutely heartbroken with that result. I can't believe that we lost it on penalties. I feel bad for some of those players, Eze and Gabriel. If you're a football fan, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If not, apologies. So I haven't actually gone back and watched a lot of these fights. I didn't watch them live, so I'm going to spend today and probably tomorrow watching them back, doing my notes, making the podcast, and the podcast will be out either Monday, Tuesday, or at latest Wednesday, and we'll discuss everything from this weekend. We'll preview next weekend's action. We'll do my moments of the week. You know what it is on the podcast, so make sure you are subscribed and you look out for that podcast, because we'll cover all the fights from the weekend. All right, like, subscribe. I'm out of here, guys. See ya.